Oh.
Welcome to the bottom line. My name is Benjamin Poole.
What's going on? I'm Gareth Soloway. And this is the bottom line.
This is the bottom line.
And we're going to discuss things that are the bottom line.
Yes.
So I think the important thing today is markets opened higher, and then we saw this big drawdown.
Big drawdown.
Like constant selling. We got a little bounce now, Friday afternoon, so not surprising. Institutions are probably gone for the weekend. Retail is buying the dip. But I think the big thing here is do we have a market top?
It looks like we could.
We could.
NVIDIA is pretty much the market right now, and so it had a really good sell-off the last couple of days. And in fact, we were really close to putting in a topping tail on the weekly chart for NVIDIA.
Is it still?
I don't know. I don't know, but
we'll know at the close today, guys.
That's right.
And that's the important thing. When you're talking about a daily chart, you can't speculate. You really got to see where that daily closes, and then it'll tell you if it's topping tail. I think with a topping tail, you assume until it's negated, right? It's a bearish signal until it's negated.
Well, either way, it's going to be high volume, and then it's going to be a reversal candle. So even if it doesn't close as a bottoming tail, it's still going to be identified as a reversal candle, but it's not as powerful as a topping tail.
Right. Why don't you show people? Let's show them on the weekly here. What do we got?
Okay, here we go. Here's the weekly chart.
That is a big candle.
It is a big candle.
That's what she said.
Actually, I'm going to look at the volume on this to see.
By the way, Friday's my fun day.
That's right.
I don't have to do trading the close today. I'm feeling loosey-goosey. Got the weekend coming up. This is the good times.
So the previous couple days the previous couple weeks did have a little bit higher volume, but the fact that you've got all these buyers in here who are stuck in the top of this candle, it's a good reversal signal, even though it's not super heavy on the volume. It could be just because we don't have as much buying pressure as the last couple weeks. So I'm going to go ahead and do a Fibonacci retracement. Top of the candle, down. Let me go ahead and adjust this. So right now it's got to close. So it looks like this is the 50% retrace.
Hold on, let me get my magnifying glass.
I know.
Can we show this on the intraday so they can actually see?
His fib levels are off on here. All right, so here's intraday. Here's the 10-minute.
There we go.
This is a little bit better.
A little bit better.
Yeah, let me go ahead and scroll over so we can see. So this is the top of the candle right here at 11:59, and then the low is 1069. And so the 50% retrace, so what we're looking for is a close in the lower 25%. We don't have that on here, but just guessing, that's 170, 115. So the midline, do you have that pen?
Yeah, sure, have a pen.
So you want to close probably right at this level. And then if it closes below that level right there, it's looking at right around the $1,000 mark. If it closes there, then you got a topping tail, and then you're looking for a 50% retrace.
Yeah.
So
go ahead. I just want to show them something on here. So check this out, guys. So yesterday, let me get rid of that. We're gonna refresh here so we get a little bit bigger. All right. So one of the things I'm just spotting here. So yesterday we had a head and shoulders pattern on this chart, right? So there was this shoulder. Come on. All right. We're gonna play games with me, huh? Right. There we go. All right. So we had shoulder, head, and shoulder, and you actually did have the neckline was right here. We actually had the breakdown. And then what I'm just seeing here, and this is speculating, right? All about speculation, but nonetheless, you do wonder if maybe this is a bigger one. Maybe we're starting to make this into a shoulder over here. Just something to keep an eye on here, where again, I guess maybe this would be the shoulder here, but either way, maybe we're making a bigger head and shoulder pattern that could actually be more downside as well. And I think for me, the weekly topping tail is going to be a big one. That's a big trend line right there. Yep, that would be key. So that's your break point. Look at how it lines here. Like, this is so cool, right? So right here to right here. And so what this tells us is that if we stretch that line out like that, if NVIDIA comes up like this and breaks, this is where your next big down move will come in. And right now that's around 1180-ish, right? Give or take. The trend line looks like it's right around that area.
Yeah, go ahead and
I'll erase those for you.
No, that's all right. So there's that trend line. So yeah, that's really interesting. Again, this is the third hit of the trend line, so it's there's no wonder that it got a bounce right around that level, right? So it could be taken a little bit lower here, And then as long as you get some choppiness through here, this is a third bounce. So what we're looking for is an eventual close below this line. So once we get a close below this line, then we have a confirmed break, or we have a breakdown, look for confirmation, retrace the scene of the crime, and then we look for a further downside move for NVIDIA.
And what Ben's been talking about here, I just drew out a little example here, but so he mentioned the third hit of the trend line. For those of you that don't know this is part of the methodology here that we use, is that in general, probabilities favor a bounce 1, 2, 3 times off of a trend line. By the fourth time, probabilities flip to the potential of a break. So in this case, here's your 1 hit, 2 hit, 3 hit. And so this was 1, 2, 3, you likely get the bounce, but then by the fourth hit, that's where you can break to the downside. Fourth to fifth hit, right in that zone. So just so you guys understand where we're coming from, this is, again, useful when you're looking at trend lines to understand how many hits it might get, or whether your probabilities favor a bounce, or is it potentially going to break.
Yeah, it's great because after the breakdown, it gives you a level, but it also gives you a clearly defined bounce level.
That's right.
So, yep.
That's right. All right, jumping over here, guys. Let's take a look at this chart of Dell. I gave this level today in the game plan. So far, it is working out well. It did go a little bit below. That's normal. Panic, fear. It causes pierces of levels, but amazing level right here, right? This was a gap fill right there. Pivot point, pierce of the level, and now Dell is back above 136. And again, the level was around 133 at this gap fill right here. So about a $3 bounce. It did pierce by almost $3 as well, but again, as we said, that's normal. Just to let you know how you can trade this, for me at least, I always start small, right? So at the line, you buy, like, let's say a 1/10 or a 1/5 position. Then when it pierces by $1, you add another position equal size. It pierces again, you add another one of equal size, and you dollar cost average in on that break, and you get your average right in this range, and then when you get the bounce, you make extra money. A lot of people, newbies especially, they go in and they say, oh, that is the level, like I'm going to make $1 million, so I'm going to buy everything I have at that level. And then it goes below and the emotion kicks in and they freak out and they take a loss. Or they just can't maneuver. You basically are handcuffed because you put all your money in on your first entry. And again, one of the most freeing things in trading, for me at least, has been the ability to start small, where I don't even, like, there's no emotion. It's like, okay, well, it's such a small position, no big deal. Goes below, I add a little bit more, still not emotional, still within my zone, even add a little bit more. And then when you get that bounce eventually, you're able to get in the money much faster because you've dollar cost averaging.
I was just going to say, it's very interesting that it actually hit right on that high right there, that top of the wick, right? So it pierced this gap fill. It didn't quite get to the bottom of it, but it sure is decided to come up and hit that wick.
It sure is. It sure is SHIT, yes. Just a note here on this chart too that's kind of interesting is that going into earnings, a lot of people were FOMOing in on this move. You have to remain agnostic. You have to remain logical. The best traders in the world never let emotion get out of control. And what you look at is, if you just go back to the beginning of May, this was like a $120 stock. It hit $180. That's a 50% move up in 1 month going into earnings, when the stock was already up like 100% in the prior few months in the beginning of the year. So you think about it logically and you say to yourself, okay, where, like, if it was trading here going into earnings, let's say this is your earnings bar. Well, now it's up here. Earnings, it has to beat by a mile up here to make it still go up even more. And so what it does is it starts shifting the probabilities of a move here. And in this case, obviously, they just, you know, and Ben even said this, you said this to me this morning. He said their earnings were actually pretty good. It's just, it just wasn't quite good enough because the bar was so high from the run up into earnings.
Well, since March, it's been over 100%.
Yeah, since March, 100%. Yeah, 100%. Incredible there. So pretty amazing stuff there. What do you got up here, Dell?
So Dell, I want to show you guys. Here's kind of something that I've been playing around with. It hasn't been released yet, but take a look at the RSI, so the Relative Strength Index. So when you get this down move in a stock like Dell, right? You get this down move, you look for the RSI to start moving up. So another thing that I end up looking for is the third hit of the RSI. So you got this move in the RSI, you pierced it once, it came up, went to about 50, it did its choppiness here, third hit of the RSI, that was the low. Let me get that back. That was the low. All right, it's just taking it away. It's fine. I'm just not gonna. It's not gonna do it for me.
We got
Try it
to
again.
reset. Don't touch the screen until it freezes. When it shows that.
All right, here we
now
go.
you do it.
Third hit. That was actually the low of the chart, and it coordinates with that that pivot top right there. So you always want to look for support and resistance. In this case, it would be support, and then we got this pretty big bounce.
Yeah.
So it's just something additional confluence in deciding when to get into a trade. So
I think that makes sense. So jumping over here, guys, take a look at this chart here. This one was one I highlighted about, I don't know, maybe about 3 or 4 days ago. It was the First Solar chart. And again, what we see here on the First Solar chart is their very clear defined channel, right? You take the lows, you connect all of these lows together, and you essentially have a trend line. You drag the parallel up to match these highs right in here. And what do you get right there? And notice First Solar starting to pull back. Just simple techniques that I hope you guys can employ yourself. The great thing about it is TradingView has a parallel channel drawer, right? And you draw your first line and you can extend it up and you just do it that way. And again, I think one of the greatest things about what we do is that we're not employing like complex mathematical formulas and like, heck, I can't even do that stuff anymore, let alone if I ever could. But the point is, again, it's all about just using simple things that give you an edge and make sense. And I think that's something like this. And we use parallels all the time.
yeah, absolutely. So based on this chart, and this is the weekly chart, right? The parallel channel. So we could expect a downside move to about $220, which is a significant pullback in First Solar.
Yeah, and just what we're doing here is the midpoint is we're finding more and more that the midpoint is useful. And what we can see here is right here, so it was up here, it went to the midpoint and pulled back, broke above the midpoint, retraced to the midpoint basically, then broke down. And so here you got the big burst up, but same thing, you should kind of expect something like that to occur. But the midpoint really does play here as a good indicator of where something could pull back.
So just a heads up, I just wanted to kind of show this. Right here, we couldn't identify that necessarily as a midpoint. We actually need 2 pivot points, so we needed this pivot point and then this pivot point, really in order for us to then finally see that this was a true midpoint. So then we drag it up here, and then we could identify this as the top. And so now we have the parallel channel, and then we look and say, oh, look at this. This is the midline, which means that it's significant. So that way, on a pullback, we can get back down to the midline.
Amazing. So a couple other things that I just wanted to touch base on. First of all, let's take a look at NVIDIA again. NVIDIA has had a good bounce on NVIDIA. You can see it's creating a little bit of a tail here, but we'll see where that ultimately goes. One thing to keep in mind here is there was a gap fill and it did not fill, which means that whether it's today or next week, I still think this needs to be filled. It's this gap right here. We came very close. I think it was within about $5 of filling that gap. So whether it's later today that it rolls over again or it's next week, honestly, it might be next week because the volume's getting really light in the markets. But it'd be interesting to see. Also, I'm noticing that the VIX is not spiking today, even with this big market reversal. That tells me that no one is worried about it yet, which tells me there could be more downside. It's when people freak out and get really panicked that oftentimes the markets finally put in their low. So I would expect some additional moves there. Couple other charts today of interest. Let me see what else was moving today. MRVL here. Let's see what that's doing. All right, there we go. Back above $68. Now, this is one that I'm still in the live Apex Live trading room here on the long side. We actually, I think we had, how many winners today did we have in the Apex Live day trading room?
If he's closed out, then
he just closed
4.
out. Four, and I think we're still in Marvel, which is almost back to break even right now. So amazing, guys, by the way. I thought today would be slow after the initial move up, and then we saw a dump
big sell-off,
and then it just shows you never know. You never know. What do we got?
So I always like to go back and see why a stock didn't hit the gap fill or whatever level. And here we have the chart of NVIDIA. So you've got this trend line right here. Kiss this low right here. All this choppiness. It broke out, and this was a retracement to the scene of the crime. So it couldn't get all the way down to the gap fill because it had this upsloping trend line that offered it support. And so what we're now looking for it to do is to bounce along this trend line a couple more times before a rollover. Then we probably get a gap fill, another bounce off of that, and then eventually further downside.
Interesting.
So that's what we're looking for. And we're looking at, we can't just say, oh, yeah, it's a topping tail or, it's a heavy sell volume. So this is definitely it. But this is what we're looking for in the next coming days or even weeks. so that way it gives us an idea, at least a better idea of more of a top in the markets, and I say markets, I mean NVIDIA, which is pretty much the market right now.
It is. It is. Quick little look at Bitcoin's chart, guys. So today, with the stock market selling off, we saw some selling on Bitcoin, but it's already recovered back off of this orange line. This is the daily chart. So again, as long as, and I said this in the game plans, as long as we hold on this line, you favor that side. If it breaks back into here, then that midline of the channel. So again, another channel, we use them all the time. They're super, super useful. But again, that would give you a downside maneuverability. You can see right here again, kind of right along here, dipped right along there, and then up. That midpoint again acting, and even right here it acted, right here, and so on and so forth. So just a quick update. I know a lot of you guys are all about the crypto stuff. And then gold real quick as well. We can touch base on gold. Gold was up earlier on the day, but I said this in the game plan. I said, guys, this is, and Ben, you know this pattern. Every day we see this pattern, right? Underneath the trend line, eventually you go down. I'm still targeting this down here as first support on gold. But again, classic pattern that plays out. I mean, just think about this. If you just have a tool belt with like 5 or 6 of these tactics, you know, bear flags, topping tails, engulfing candles, channels. I mean, it is game changing when it comes to being able to put the odds in your favor. Not to be a great, like, listen, you're never going to be 100%, right? I'm not 100%. I still take losses. Heck, I might lose on my MRVL today. 1 out of 5 will take it. But either way, this is where it's at to learn this type of stuff, folks, and that's what verified investing is all about, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. We're here to educate you guys.
What wise words do you want to leave them with today?
When you're entering the markets, stay nimble. If you go too heavy in a position and you have no maneuverability, you feel like your hands are stuck, your hands are tied together, and you're just going to end up making a mistake. So be nimble.
Be nimble, be flexible.
Humble.
Humble is the key, and I think the markets humble you, and I think that to me is always the thing. Is as long as I've traded, it's just you're always one. You might have 10 great trades. You're always one trade away from getting wrecked if you let your cockiness take over. So I think that's the key. So that's a good one. So what do you want to say to them? You want to give them your little spiely?
Oh yeah. Thank you guys for joining us today. Please understand that this is for educational purposes only, and we'll see you next time. Oh no.
And that's the bottom line.
Yeah, there we go.